thank you, Tim, for joining me for a few moments today. Every once in a while, I'd like to chat with people about what God's done in their life, their testimony. And if you could, before we get into any specific stories, tell me a little bit about your journey in coming to Christ and what that was like.
Oh my. Back in 1985, when I gave my heart to Christ, I was a truck driver over the road, and we had a babysitter that attended our house quite a bit, and every time I'd come home, she'd harass me about, why don't you give your heart to Christ? Why don't you give your heart to Christ? And it's like, oh. You know. So finally, from being chewed on like a dog's leg, I said, what do I got to do for you to shut up? And she said, well, say this prayer with me. So I said the sinner's prayer. I said, okay, are we happy now? And then she got on the phone and called 2 or 3, oh, Tim just gave his heart to Christ, Tim. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Meant nothing to me other than, finally appeased her enough. But as of then it began to like, well, I should go to church after all, So when I was home, I went to church and started liking it. And then you make new friends, and then people have similar interest in you and so on. You hang around, and so it became pretty cool, But it was still very casual, So it just didn't hit for a long time. It was just something I went through to do. So that's how it started.
Now, you're a very passionate follower of Christ. So you changed from that casual. What changed? What transpired in you that changed you?
Well, I think, there's instances in my life that I've seen Christ so evident that I couldn't deny it. One time my wife and I was working on a sweeper. I'm a handyman. I fix everything. Well, we lost a part. She picked it up. It went flying. And I'm like, oh, man, we need that part, And I'm like, well, and so I'm outside. And I said, Lord, I need to find that part. I need it. And it was in amongst these flowers. My wife, she plants flowers everywhere, and it's beautiful, but also you could hide a dead body in there if you wanted to, So, but here comes this piece, and it was no bigger than a quarter. And I'm like, oh, can you believe, I said, Ruth Ann, did you? And I'm smiles, and then it's like, wow, So stuff like that. So many things. Just recently, my wife's phone went on to blink, and she was at the ocean, and she calls me, and she says, hey, I'm going to need a new phone, this and that, blah, blah, blah. I said, wait till you get home, because we buy them together. So anyway, she come home, and it wouldn't work, and I'm looking, and I said, can I see it? And she said, yeah. I said, did you pray over your phone? She's like, pray over your phone? I said, yeah, Ruth Ann, pray about everything, there's nothing anything that we have around us, anything that's in our midst, God created for us. It may have been a man, but God gave the increase, just like the Word of God. It was His inspired Word. Well, anything we have is inspired of God. I prayed for it. And I said, Lord, we need this phone. We don't really want to buy new ones. They're so expensive and so on like that. I plugged it in, let it sit there a while, and nothing. And then all of a sudden, I have one of those old-fashioned Android phones. You people don't know anything about them, but it started charging. And so I left it there, and I said, Lord, it's yours. It was yours in the first place. And the next morning, she got it, and she said, hey, it's working. You can't believe it. And I'm like, that's our God. That's Him.
So those experiences over and over have
so
built
many
you to where you are today.
Yeah, you don't have enough time for me to fill in all the gaps. So.
Now, I know as a believer, everything isn't, peaches and cream when you become a follower of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
You've had a few ups and downs, and God has really brought you through some situations. Would you care to share a little about that, those journeys?
Yeah, I was a truck driver, and I thought I was the ace boo coup. I was making twice as much as anybody else. I was going from the house all the time, but money-wise, in the end of the day, it looked good, and so I became pretty... I ain't got time for you, I ain't got time for you, and arrogant and cocky, and it was my way or the highway, and God saw that in me, and He said, hey, you need to change that. And I'm like, yeah, come on, I believe in you. I'm going to church. I'm throwing my $20 in the plate. I'm good. Before I knew how to tithe and, the benefit of all that. And I think sin leads to consequences. Well, I had a situation with my back, and I was doing therapy over at one of the local places here, and my heart was like, wow. And the lady came by, my therapist, she said, how you doing? I said, I don't know, I feel terrible, I'm sweating. And she said, well, get off of there. And I said, well, I still got 2 minutes. She says, get off of there, Goofy. So I got off. They called AMED. They came, and I had had a heart situation that I didn't know. This was out at Joyner, and Bon Secours was right there. They ripped my shirt open. I thought, holy crap, and they're putting these things on me, and then I'm in a full-blown something or other, you know, and they take me to Bon Secours. From Bon Secours, I went to Altoona, and ended up being a triple bypass. They did a catheterization, and they said, you got one at 100, one at 90, one at 70. And I'm like, so what's that mean, you know? So I'm doctoring for a back, and my heart goes bad in the meantime. And so we did the catheterization, and they said, you need a triple bypass. I said, okay, when? And there's 3 doctors there, and they're looking like, well, we're only doing 4 tomorrow. We usually do 5. I'm like, tomorrow? They're like, yeah. I said, yeah, let's do it, because I don't want to think about this, because you know, it's scary, because it's, good Lord, I'm 41 years old. This is back in 1997, you know. So all that to say, I went through, I had the triple bypass. The back still wasn't good, but I have an artificial right hip, so they said, your back is out of line because of, so they said, if we did a hip surgery and brought that hip up where it belongs, your back would probably be fine. I said, all right, so let's do it. So I had the heart in November, the back in January. They're like, you can't do it, you need to heal. I said, I'm already laying around doing nothing. You know, I want to get back to work, because that's my identity. That's where my identity was. Well, they did the hip, and it didn't do a thing for my back. So then in September of '98, I had the back surgery, a major surgery. So I was off work for 2 years. And here's this cocky, arrogant man that he makes his own way, and he does his own thing, and you're in my way. And, you know, it was so humbling, because people brought me food. And I'm like, oh, I don't need food. Well, I'll find somebody to give it to. I said, all right, you know, I'll give it to one of the neighbors. As soon as they left, I put it in the cupboard. I needed it. I was just too stinking arrogant and, you know, self-reliant to be able to say, okay, Christ. Somebody was sending me money every 2 weeks, and an unaddressed, you know, no way of sourcing who it was. And it's like, oh, weeping. You know, my wife's going to work every day, and she's, okay, I'll see you later on. And she's, all right, I'm not. I work. I make the big money. You know, and God finally, like, poof, poof, poof. I was looking straight up, buddy, because I was as low as I could be for Tim-wise. And I finally submitted to Christ. And I said, Lord, you know, weeping like a baby. And he, in my, the way I would describe it is he's like, oh, you think you got it now? Yeah, Lord, I submit. He said, all right, like pat me on the on the butt and said, okay, get up. I was back to work in a week, back driving a tractor trailer, which I love to do. For the first week, Troy, I couldn't get in it without bawling. You know, it was just like, God, you're so good. You're so good. Now, I hated that 2 years. I can tell you that 2 years of it. You know, I'm going to be off a month, maybe 2 years. God's, you know, because I'm a slow learner. You know, my last name's Lozinski and all that. So I learned slow, but he showed me, and that opened my eyes to say there isn't anything that isn't through Christ, you know. And so just recently, you know, we've got this government stuff that's going on, and it, you know, you can become overwhelmed with it. It can rack your brain. And then I read some stuff that says, I read it at the Lighthouse one day, I have overcome the world. It's like, yeah, you have, haven't you? You know, why are we worrying about so much about what he did, what she did, what they said, what they're doing, you know, and this and that? And I just said, no, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. It'll never go away. Its mercies are new every morning. And so that's how I live my life now, you know, and it makes me happy. And I can be happy, and I'm not grumpy anymore, and I'm not, you know, so much. I say, you know, I'm still, you know, you hang out with me once in a while, you know, but I just love the Lord. That's all there is to it.
You know, Tim, I think I watched your journey. I haven't seen this entire journey that you talk about, but I watched your journey of just life. And I know you have a litany of stories you could tell about God's faithfulness. And I always enjoy hearing your stories, because no matter what you're going through, you always show the goodness of God in your life. And I often razz you, you know, we joke a lot, but I want you to know that I consider you one of the most influential people in our church.
Wow.
Just because of you just let the aura of God elude off of you. You know, I have you on our worship team, And when you play, you don't just play in the rhythm section, you worship God through what you do.
Thank you.
And I think that is something that we can all learn from. And I just really want you to know I appreciate you and all that you do, even if I give you a hard time. And I probably won't say
I'm
another
not
good
sure
thing
I
about
believe
you.
all this, but
And I probably won't say too many other good things about you. But today, in all honesty, I appreciate you. And this is why I wanted to pull you in for a testimony. I felt that I've seen God do some amazing things through you, and because we hear them often, maybe we'll pull you in again sometime and hear about more.
that's
stories.
great. Yep. 13 surgeries later, but God's still on the throne. It really doesn't matter what's going on in your life. He's still right there. He's as close as a brother.
Thanks, Tim.
Mm-hmm.